In the last video, we talked about what a variable is and how it sets aside memory on your computer, and I used different size boxes to demonstrate that. So in this video, we're going to talk about the code that actually makes that happen. So I'm going to click into my Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to talk about three keywords. So there are three keywords you can use when you want to set aside memory on your computer to store information. The first keyword, and the one that I use most often, is the keyword let. What the keyword let says is it says set aside some memory. This memory, you can change what's inside of it, but just go ahead and set it aside. So I use the keyword let, and then I give the variable a name. So using the keyword let is like creating this box. This box doesn't have a name. I said you probably want to put something descriptive so people know what's inside of it. So if I was going to store a first name inside this variable, then I'm going to use the keyword let, that creates a box, and then I am going to create the variable first name. That tells you what's inside the variable. Some of you may have noticed that I did something weird with the casing on this variable. I used a lowercase f and an uppercase n. There are different variable naming conventions, and the naming convention you use should be whichever one your company uses. Whoever you're working for, whatever they use that. If there isn't a set standard, then be consistent. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that you could type this. So the first is I could say, I'm going to make this a comment. So as a reminder, when you put in a comment, it's 2 forward slashes, or you can hit Command or Control slash, and that'll put in the comment. So the first type, the one that I used, is called camel case. That's where you make the first letter lowercase, and then every start of a word thereafter starts with an uppercase character. So this is camel case. The next one we're going to talk about is called snake case. This is often used by people who develop in Python, but it can be used with any language. And that is you type it all lowercase, and then you use an underscore, and that denotes the next word. So I could type first underscore name, and so this is called snake case. I could type all uppercase for every single word. So I could say first name, and we call this Pascal case. And there are others, but these are probably the most common ones you're going to see. I like camel case, so that's probably the one you'll see me use throughout most of these videos. So I have now created, I used the let keyword, that created a box. I'm now putting a name on the box, and I'm putting a label across it that says first name. That means that this variable is going to store a first name. Now we could end it there. So what we've done is we've created a box, and we put a semicolon that says we are done with this line. So I've now created a box, and I put a label on it called first name. I could now put something into that box. One way you put something into the box is you say first name equals, and then whatever you put on the other side of the equals goes into that box. So I would say my first name is Toa, and then I'll put a semicolon, and that ends that line. So what I've done is I've created the variable, and then I've stored something in it. We can actually do this all on one line if we know what we want to store in the box ahead of time. So we can say let first name equal Toa. So what that does is it says create a box, put a label on it called first name. Inside of that box, store the text Toa. The other type of variable, the other way you can define a variable, and actually in this case, what you're doing is you're defining a constant, is to use the keyword const. So that's C-O-N-S-T. And then we'll say const, trying to think of something that doesn't change. Const happy. I am sometimes not happy. This isn't a really good example, but we'll create a constant and we'll store in it the word true. Oh, sorry. I've been coding in Python. True is lowercase. Okay. What we've done here is we've said create a box. That's what the const does. It does the same thing as let, except it says create a box and don't let anything change what's in the box. So once I've put something in the box, lock the box and don't let anyone else get in there. So now for the rest of our program, happy will always be true. Later on, we can change what the first name is, but we cannot change what's inside of happy. So the happy box, as because we've put it as a constant, it does not change. So the two keywords you'll most often use is let, and that's for when you want to create a box that could have information that changes. And const is for when you want to create a box where nothing changes. This is helpful if you're like setting up some settings for your app and you want those settings to be the same every single time your app runs, then you'll want to use const. There is one other way to create a variable, and this keyword works very similar to the keyword let. You'll see it in people who have been coding in JavaScript for a long time because the let keyword didn't used to exist. The let keyword is the best way to create a variable, but you're going to work with other people's code, and so you're going to see other ways to create variables. The last way to create a variable is the keyword var. There are some issues with the way this creates a variable, so I would avoid using it if you can. But if you see someone else has it in their code, just understand that it creates a variable exactly the same way let does. So if I wanted to create a last name, I'd say var last name equals, and then that's where I'd put my last name. And that wraps up our discussion on how to create variables. So in summary, let is for creating variables that you want to change. Const is for creating a constant that doesn't ever change. And var is an old way of creating variables that you might see when you're working on your job. And that wraps up this video. Thanks for watching.